Good morning, Jim Schwartz here with Beck's Hybrids. With me this morning is Luke Schulte. Luke is a field agronomist for Beck's Hybrids over in Ohio. Luke, give us a little update on harvest progress in the state of Ohio.
All right, Jim. So it's kind of a tale of two worlds. North of Route 30, soybean harvest is pretty minimal, maybe 25 to 30% done. But when you get south of Route 30, where they had a little earlier planting window, but still did a lot of planting on the first part of June, soybean harvest is pretty far along. Many farmers 65, 70% done. In the deep south of Ohio, it's nearly complete. In regards to corn, there's been little progress made. North of 30, almost non-existent other than silage. Silage chopping's pretty well complete. But then south of Route 30, there's been a little bit harvested for grain, but the focus has been on soybeans to this point.
Is the corn ready, Luke, or did the late planting date delayed enough that the corn's not even ready?
Yeah, so the southern half of Ohio, south of 70, the corn is mature. There's harvest reports of 17, 18% corn, but a lot of 20% corn. Now, north of Route 30 and along that Route 30 corridor, much of the corn that was planted in the first 12 days, 14 days or so of June is just right at that black layer stage. So plus or minus, I was in some corn yesterday that wasn't even quite black layered. So just within a week or so of reaching actual maturity.
What kind of yield levels are you hearing in your neck of the woods, Luke?
So obviously very minimal on corn just because of the amount of that's been harvested, but surprisingly yield levels on soybeans have been very good. And even that being considered, much of the area or much of the state was extremely dry in the month of August and September when we think about, filling pods and sizing beans. But surprisingly, yields have been very good even in those dry areas. While there's some disappointments, overall, yields have been very good. And I attribute most of that just to low disease pressure, but also seed size has been able to be maintained and has been remarkably good.
So is it like 50 to 70 bushel range that you're seeing, or lower, higher?
So hearing a lot of yield reports of 50 to 70. I've heard a few reports, lower than that in that 40 range where they were really, really drought stricken, but many, many yields in that 60 bushel range. Even with low pod counts, seed sizes has helped us maintain good yields.
How about corn yields? What are you seeing, even though you haven't heard a lot of harvest results? Is corn decent, above average? What do you think?
Corn is really all over the board. So there's been some rather poor corn harvested, and there's been some rather good corn, 200 plus bushel corn that's been shelled to this point. It seems to be very reflective of soil type. Because much of the state got very, very dry during the grain fill period in August and early September, grain yields are directly correlated to water holding capacity. The higher the water holding capacity, very, very good yields. And then in that same strip of 8 rows, you'll see yields drop, from 80 to 280 to 80 bushels. So extremes, but overall field averages are also that extreme. Some rather poor yields, but some yields that have been run have been very surprisingly good as well.
Luke, are there any agronomic oddities that are showing up in your neck of the woods?
So soybean harvest has gone well, and quality, unlike last year, is very, very good. We don't have the frog-eye leaf spot like we had a year ago. But in corn, there are a couple things that are a little out of character for Ohio anyway. Because of late planting, we've seen a lot of corn borer pressure. I'm not as concerned about the impact to standability as I am to the potential for some ear drop in especially those non-GMO fields. We've seen some ear shank tunneling that could lead to some ear drop if those fields aren't harvested in a timely manner. And then the other thing that I would encourage guys to get out in their fields and look at is the potential or the threat of some ear mold, specifically like gibberella ear mold. And that's primarily due to lots and lots of earworm feeding. Many times with earworm feeding, it's not the effects that we get from the kernels they actually eat. It's the fact that the earworm are basically the entry point in which a lot of those ear molds can actually enter the ear. So many times we blame that on other things and possibly hybrid or environment. And in a lot of cases this year, I think there could be some gibberella ear mold that is actually just a result of the earworm feeding, and it's allowed that to actually enter the ear itself.
So they need to go out and check the field, do some random checks throughout spots in the field, and just double check, because it can impact the quality of the grain and the ability to market the grain as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think it's just a good way to get an idea of how soon do I need to get place these things in terms of priority of harvest, and those fields that maybe you're seeing a little more earworm feeding, perhaps move them a little bit higher on the priority list for harvestability.
Fantastic. Luke, thanks for that update from Ohio. This morning, I'm Jim Schwartz. With me today, Luke Schulte, field agronomist from Ohio. Thanks, Luke. Have a safe harvest.
Thanks, Jim.